Hola, hola a todos. Welcome back to the next episode of Amiga Mia Talk Show. This is actually the last episode before we get to the finale Christmas special. And I have been DMing contacting emailing this Latina back and forth for a couple of months. And I am really have great admiration for what she does in terms of her work and, being able to be in a position that a lot of Latinas across Australia, and arguably across like the world even, don't have that opportunities. I'd love to get a little bit of a window. So I'm talking about Laura Vasquez, whose roots are Paraguayan, if I'm right.
Paraguayan and Argentina. I was born in Argentina, but my parents are both Paraguayan.
There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. And actually, I'm so excited, even more so than usual, because I don't come across Paraguayans very often.
Yeah. There's not many here in Australia, but there is a community. My dad's actually the president of the Paraguayan Association here in Australia. Yeah.
No.
So we pretty much know all the Paraguayans here in Australia. So he, has put on events like parties, picnics. He's getting a bit old in age now. So a lot of the Paraguayans are of a more mature age. So they're kind of slowing down on the parties now. But for many years, my father was the president and, always organized a lot of the functions, the fiestas and the picnics. So yeah.
That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I have a lot of respect for Paraguayans because growing up, I had a family. My mum had a best friend who was Paraguayan and like a couple, and then they had three kids who now are older and got their own kids and whatnot. But we sort of grew up together because I don't
Nice.
have much family here, so you kind of stick with your community. And
Yeah.
my close family friends were Paraguayan. Yeah, a lot of
Yeah, they're
respect and
lovely, lovely people. Very, I mean, all South Americans are, but Paraguayans, they're very welcoming. And, when people come from overseas or other Latinos, they welcome them with open arms. And yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful culture.
I used to be obsessed with what is it called? Sopa Paraguayan?
Sopa
The
paraguaya.
dish.
Yeah, it's the best. My grandmother and my mum, I think, I'm not being biased, but make the best sopa paraguaya. So I'll have to invite you one day so you can try it.
I am obsessed.
Yeah.
Still to this point where that family that we're still connected with, they actually make it for my mum. Like, my mum purchases off them because mum moved up to the coast now and she's like, I can't live without it.
Yeah, it's so
But you're
good.
based in Melbourne, is that right?
Sydney. Yeah, I'm in Sydney.
Why do I think you were in Melbourne?
I don't know. No, I'm a Sydney girl. Yeah. Well, I was
Okay,
born in
cool.
Argentina, but I came to Australia when I was 6 months. So I was
Uh-huh.
raised in Australia, but still with the South American culture, which was beautiful. My parents kept that up. My brother and I both speak fluent Spanish. That was just a choice for my parents. Like when we went to school, we learned English, but when we came home, because my grandparents didn't speak English and my grandparents lived with us, so they kept up the Spanish, which I'm so thankful for now because when I did go back to Paraguay and Argentina, I was able to speak to my cousins and my aunties and uncles.
Mm.
It wasn't a thing of like, oh, what are they saying? I could freely speak because I was taught Spanish when I was young.
Did you go to Spanish school by any chance
No,
here in
I
Sydney?
didn't. I was probably one of
No.
the only. I think all Latinos went to Spanish school when I was in school. But I think
Yeah.
because mum and dad we spoke Spanish at home, there wasn't really a need to go to Spanish school because we already
Yeah.
knew how to speak it and write it as
Yeah.
well. Because I also write Spanish and read it. Yeah,
Nice. That's
yeah.
impressive. No, I was definitely one of the ones who was forced to go to Spanish school. So that was a fun experience.
But it would have
So
been fun. It would have been fun. Yeah.
it was. That's where I met most of the community and like people that I know today as friends who are also Latin.
Yeah, nice.
And we've got that shared experience of like growing up in Australia and also having a Latin background. So it's like a nice balance.
Yeah.
And did your brother also was born in Argentina? Was he
Yeah,
born here?
my brother was born in Argentina and he actually, about how many years ago now, was living over there went back over there to live for 5 years and just recently came back to Australia. I was 6 months and my brother was one and a half, I think, when we came to Australia. My parents actually, it was one of those situations where it was like a lottery. A lot of Argentinian families at the time in the 70s had the choice of either going to Canada or Australia. So it was like a kind of like a ticket, like a lottery. And my parents applied for it, and they got Australia because they just wanted a better life, better education for me and my brother. So they migrated to Australia in the 70s.
Yeah, nice. I was
Yeah.
gonna ask that. So it was around the 70s.
Yeah.
Do you feel like your parents like integrated, or what was like their experience like coming to
Wow. I mean,
Australia?
from what my father tells me, it was quite difficult when they came over to Australia. Villawood was the place where everyone, all the kind of migrants came and stayed. And I remember my dad telling me a story where he would just lock himself in a room with my mum and me and my brother. They were scared because they didn't know anyone, they didn't have family here, they didn't speak the language. So it was quite frightening to kind of go out into the real world and kind of understand the language. And but luckily, my father was a mechanic and my mum a hairdresser, so they got jobs pretty much straight away and little odd jobs here and there. And they met other, mainly mum said that she met a lot of Italians and Portuguese. And because Spanish is very similar, she picked up a lot of Italian and a lot of Portuguese and became friends with Italians and Portuguese, I guess. And that's how she kind of like found herself friends and, integrated with other nationalities.
I recall growing up as well, where my mum would talk Portuguese to her family friends. I mean, to her
Yeah.
friends, and I'm like, how do you
Yeah.
do that? I mean,
I
I
know.
think I would struggle now, but I guess it's
Definitely.
like a
That's the same with
survival
me.
thing.
Like I
Yeah.
find it amazing. I think how they picked up, the
Mm.
language. I guess it was maybe out of desperation because, like they didn't know. So they probably thought this is the only way that we're going to, get through this. Let's just listen and pick up different languages because Italian is so similar to Spanish.
Yeah. And what was it like growing up in Sydney with Paraguayan background? Like how was that whole experience?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was great because I actually went to a lot of the Club Argentino. I became Miss Argentina when I was 15.
No,
Yes,
stop
I was
it,
Miss
really?
Argentina. and I
Yes.
and I won a trip to Argentina, which is amazing. But so I was very involved in the Argentinian culture. So every Friday nights we had to go to the club, and we would eat the asado and chorizo and hang out with all the Argentinians. And my father and my brother were also involved in soccer. My brother played soccer, my dad played soccer. So again, we were always surrounded by Latinos. And then my father, of course, was the president of the Paraguayan Association. So growing up, it was beautiful because I was always surrounded by the culture, the music, the food, the people. So it was nice because I was brought up in Australia, so had the Australian culture, but also had the South American culture. So yeah, I loved it, and to this day, even with my children, I like to still embrace the South American culture. My husband's British, so growing up, my girls, it was hard because my husband and I talk English, but my daughters always are interested, so they understand it more than they speak it. They also love the culture. We still do, the 24th, so the girls get the Argentinian culture, and then we do the 25th. We do the British culture. So my dad or my brother cook, do the asado on the 24th, La Buena Noche, and then on the 25th, I cook a roast and do the whole British version. So they get both cultures, mum and dad's.
It's the best balance.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I
the
love
best
it.
of both.
It's the best balance. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the one. The best
And they
balance.
get double the presents, so they're happy. They get
Yeah,
presents on the 24th at midnight, and then they get Christmas presents on Christmas Day.
I love that. And wow, Miss Argentina. And
Yeah.
when you say the club, were you talking about the Argentinian club or the Uruguayan club?
No, the Argentinian club. Yeah, I'm not sure if they still have the Argentinian club anymore, but back in the 90s, it was quite big, the Argentinian club, every Friday nights, and usually they'd have a fiesta on a Saturday. But yeah, they used to always do Miss Uruguay, Miss Argentina in Australia, the Australian version. And so when I was asked to enter when I was, I think, 15 or 16, and so I entered it just for fun.
Do you still have any like pictures or anything of that?
I do somewhere. I have pictures
Somewhere?
somewhere. Yeah.
Because I'd love, if that's okay, I'd love to share
Yeah,
that as well as part of this
sure.
whole
Yeah,
show, because I think it's
I'll find,
awesome.
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And did that like, I guess I'm trying to look for the connection between what you're doing now or what you
Yeah.
started doing as a profession and that, like, so now you're in a space where you do, is it hair and makeup
Yeah, so I'm
on
I'm the head designer, head of hair and makeup at Home and Away, the TV show. But before that, I was on the show. So I
mm,
was an actress. I was on
what?
the show in the 90s as one of the the stars on the show. So I've come full circle. Yeah. So that's my story. My story is I was an actress. So, and yes, Miss Argentina, I went to performing arts school. So I did dancing, singing, acting. So for me, doing the catwalk and all of that, it kind of all incorporated what I do in the entertainment world. So, and then when I was 17, I was cast in Home and Away. So I was the first Latina, I think, to be on Home and Away. I know Pia Miller, who is also an actress, she came after me, but I was the first Latina to be on Home and Away, and also one of the first kind of ethnic girls that, got cast in it. So it was a very proud moment for me because I had so many young girls message me who said, "Oh my God, finally there's a girl that looks like us that we can aspire to be an actress or a television person or someone in the entertainment industry," because we never had many girls with brown hair and brown eyes, and so it was lovely to be able to be that inspiration for young girls.
I had no idea. I mean, if I
Yeah,
look back now, I might be like, oh my God, I
yeah,
put two and
yeah,
two
yeah, yeah,
together.
yeah. Yeah, I was on the
Oh.
show for 3 years, so
And
it's been.
what was your character's name?
My character was Sarah Thompson. So I lived with Alf, Ray Ma, who plays Alf. I lived with him, and I was in the era of Shane and Angel, which were two very popular characters, Melissa George and Dita Brummer. So it was in the 90s, 93, 94, and 95.
Oh my goodness, that is
Yeah,
amazing. I would actually say, because every time someone asks me who is the first like Latina to be on like Australian TV, I always
yeah,
think of Pia Miller.
yeah, yeah.
So that is
Because
incredible because
probably because I was
you're,
a lot, probably you're not generation. I mean, you're probably a lot younger. Because this was going back, as I said, in 93, 94, 95. But yeah,
and it's also good because of, Argentinian Paraguayan background, because
yeah,
it's nice to have representation for Argentina and Paraguay
that's
because
right.
there's not too much out there in terms of like people
No,
Latinas doing things that are quite
no, not on television or
not
on
on
our screens.
television.
No.
Yeah.
And that's what, well, for me, it was always like the first time I watched Selena with Jennifer Lopez. As a young actress, I didn't see many Latinas on screen. And I remember watching Selena and watching Jennifer Lopez and thinking, oh my gosh, like, she's amazing. She's Latina. She's an actress. She's a singer. She's a dancer. She's a businesswoman. It was like finally someone that, you can kind of think, okay, well, if she can do it, I can do it.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say like Selena would have been an amazing
Yeah.
influence at that point. Yeah.
100%, yeah. And not many people knew of Jennifer Lopez then. That was her kind of first movie that kind of put her in the spotlight. And then of course she became, J Lo, and she went off to do massive things.
I have a question. So you're on Home and Away,
Yeah,
which is probably one of the most popular shows, if not the most popular in Australia.
yeah,
I certainly watched it like almost
yeah,
every day.
yeah.
And were you portraying like an quote Anglo-Australian character, or were
I
you
was.
portraying? Yeah.
I was, yeah, yeah. My father was an Australian that played. My father on the show was Australian, so yeah, I didn't play Latina. I played Sarah Thompson.
And how was that like? Did you ever let your Latinidad slip a little bit? Like, did you throw
No,
in?
never. But I did play other Latina roles. Because after Home and Away, I had guest roles on a show called Flipper, which was an American series with Jessica Alba. She was 15 years old at the time. And both times I was on the show, I played Latina. I played Cuban. So I have played Latino roles before. And basically in America, they're always casting Australians in Latino roles. But on Home and Away,
Yeah.
no, I played an Australian.
But like, it's still a beautiful feeling to know that you were the one in that
Yeah,
role, and
yeah.
yeah, because so
It's
many
really
people
nice.
look
To
up to
this
that.
day, it's really lovely because people recognize that, and especially Latinos, I always get lovely messages saying, you are an inspiration, and it's great to
Absolutely.
see Latinas doing so well in the entertainment industry. So that makes me feel really, really good.
What
Yeah.
got you into acting? Like, what was the kind of driver behind all of that?
I mean, no, there was no one in my family that was in the entertainment industry. Just as a young girl, I just loved drama at school. I did that as one of my subjects, and I just loved it. And then just my mum took me to drama school one day, and I also loved dancing. I think coming as well from a Latin background, we all love to dance. We love music, so I wanted to do dance classes, and so started dance classes, singing classes, and I think that's how it kind of came about. And then one day when I was in my dance class, some acting agencies came to watch us in our performance, and they chose a few people from the dance class to join their agency. So they asked if I'd like to join. And so my mum said, yeah, great, see how it goes. And so I joined the agency. And from there, they started sending me for auditions. And then Home and Away came up. And I mean, every young Australian person dreams of being on a show like Home
Yeah.
and Away or Neighbours, because they're the biggest TV dramas on television. And so I went for the audition. They were casting in Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane. And I auditioned 3 times. I think I had to keep going back for different auditions with the directors and the producers. And then it got down to me and another girl, and then got the role. And I was like, as I said, I was 17, so it was a dream come true. I remember my mum walking into school and telling me, I could see she walked in and she had tears in her eyes, and I just knew straight away. And she just said, your agent just called, you got Home and Away. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, it was so exciting. I just remember crying and screaming, and it was a dream come true. And that's why I think Home and Away is such a big part of my life, because as I said, I've come full circle now, because now I'm the head designer of hair and makeup. So I design all the hair and makeup that you see on the show is my designs. I have a wonderful team of makeup artists that work with me. All the beautiful makeup that you see on the show is by us.
How did you end up, how did you transition after 3 years acting in Home and Away? And then how did that work from you transitioning into makeup?
So I still continued acting after Home and Away, probably around, I'd say, 10 years ago. I'd always been interested in hair and makeup because my mum was a hairdresser and she had a hairdressing salon. So I grew up, after school, I'd come and help her, and I was always intrigued when I'd watch her do hair and makeup and nails. So I always had an interest in it. As I got older, I got married, I had children, and life took a bit of a turn because I lost my mum when I was 22 years old, and she was my rock, my best friend. So my priorities changed, and I think I just took a step back from acting, and I just tried to kind of find something else that I was passionate about. I had 2 little girls, and I remember always, wanting to learn about makeup. Even when I was an actress, I would sit in the makeup chair and ask the makeup artist, what are you using? What's that? How do you do that? So I went to and got my training. I went to makeup school and hair and got all my qualifications, and, just started doing weddings and things like that. And then, TV and drama and film was always something that I was interested in, getting into makeup in that kind of world. And so I reached out to a couple of makeup artists that used to be my makeup artist and said, I'd love to come and work with you or learn from you. And just started doing that, and then it just kind of took off, and I was getting a lot of work, and it was kind of taking over the acting work. And so I thought, oh, this is fun. I'm really enjoying this. I'm enjoying being creative, and I love doing makeup. I love doing hair. I love making people feel beautiful. And then there was a position at Home and Away, and a makeup artist that I was working on a film said to me, oh, there's a position at Home and Away. Do you want to come and do some freelancing on? And I thought, yeah, I'd love to go back and see everyone. So I went back one day and did a couple of days on it. And then there was an actual full-time position going, and the head of department at the time offered it to me. And I spoke to my husband and I said, can we do this with 2 kids? Are we able to juggle? Because this is full-time. And my husband said, yeah, go for it, because, you love it. Time to be creative again after having kids, because I was a full-time mum for, once I had my girls, it was my decision to stay at home and be with them until they went off to school. So I accepted it, and here I am 8 years later, and now I'm the head of department there. So it's amazing. And it's like I've never left in kind of a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just behind the scenes now.
Yeah, well, I love it because I quite often look at your Instagram and I see how it looks like such a fun and rewarding role.
Yeah, it's so much fun. And we're very lucky. We have a wonderful crew and cast. It's like a big family. It's wonderful. Yeah, I'm very lucky. I'm very blessed to work there.
Yeah, I can imagine. And did you ever work with Pia Miller?
I did. I worked with her before she left. She's a friend of mine still to this day. She's in America now. She's married and having a wonderful life, but we stay in touch every now and then on social media. We'll message each other. When she got married, I messaged her, and she's beautiful. She's a lovely, lovely woman too.
Just looking at, so myself growing up in Australia, I watched both every day? Because I feel like was it Neighbours first, then Home and Away, or the other way around?
I think it might have been Neighbours first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think so.
I watched those two religiously, and I always used to remember growing up with those characters was like growing up in Australia. Like it's you know what I mean? It's like you can't have one without the other. That's my personal experience, but I know
Yeah,
many of my friends are
100%.
very similar. So
Yeah,
it's so nice to know that yourself being
yeah,
on that show
yeah,
and really thinking, and then also fear as well, like looking at
yeah.
two Latinas, like it's just a proud moment of representation. And
Yeah,
I
it
just,
is a proud moment. And I think me and Pia knew that when we were together on the show, when we worked together. We were always very supportive of each other. Even now, whenever she does something, I'll always do a little post for her because, yeah, we both got each other, we're both Latinas. Here we are doing wonderful things. And yeah, it's great camaraderie between Latinas.
and what, like, how do your parents, or now you're done.
Yeah,
So
my
sorry to
father.
hear about your
Yeah,
mum.
thank
So
you.
how is your father with you along the journey of being in Home and Away and being
Yeah.
behind the scenes? Like, is he,
Yeah, so proud. Yeah,
yeah,
I've been very lucky to have supportive parents, supportive family. But yeah, he's always been 100% behind me and just always been really supportive, and very proud, very proud. He's so cute. Like he'll always post things on his Facebook page whenever
no,
I'm
stop
doing
it.
something or there's an article about me, there he is posting it up and, so proud of his daughter, which is
I love
lovely. Yeah.
that generation and Facebook.
I
They do.
know. They're so cute. Sometimes they crop photos, and they cut your head out or things like that, but at least they try.
It's so true.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love it.
I love it.
And then so whilst you were going through that era, right, of like you were in Home and Away, or even that like talking about that time where you were like that 10 years in between, what did that look like for you? Like was that you were just sort of acting different gigs here and there? Like
Yeah, I was
is
doing
that
a lot of, as I was saying before, a lot of the work that I did after Home and Away was American. As you've seen, that we don't see many people that look like myself or you on television here in Australia. So I found that I was getting more roles for American things than I was getting for Australia. So because in America, Latinas are very popular, there's always roles for South American people in America, but here in Australia, not so much. So yeah, a lot of the things that I did you probably wouldn't have seen in Australia. It was mainly for America, American TV series. And I did The Lost World, which was an American TV series.
oh yeah.
Beastmaster, another American TV series. Flipper, which I spoke to before. A TV mini series that was shot in Australia called The Beast. So yeah, it was all mainly American things. Yeah.
So were they shot in Australia,
Shot
but
in
they were
Australia.
full?
Yeah. In Queensland. Most of those shows that I just told you about were shot in Movie World because at the time they were shooting a lot of film and television in Movie World in Queensland. So I got to fly to the Gold Coast to shoot all those. The Beast was shot in Sydney in Australia.
Nice. And tell me, because one of my questions was going to be, oh, does that mean you moved to the States? But if they were shooting
No.
in Australia, like that's good
Yeah, it was
because
good.
I
I
would
didn't have to
imagine it would
travel
be,
to America. Yeah, it
yeah,
was
that
all
would be
done here.
chaotic. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, like
No, sure.
how, so you met your husband and you've got two children, two daughters, and do you manage to keep aspects of your Latin culture? And if you do, like what do you do to keep the culture?
Yeah, we do. I mean, as I said, Christmas time is, the 24th. We go to my father's house. This year, I think we're doing it at my brother's house. He's doing Christmas Eve. My father does asado, the barbecues, every couple of months. So we all get together. My brother, his family, me, my husband, my kids, we get together, so the food. My grandmother doesn't speak English, so my grandmother as well makes empanadas, chipa, which is Paraguayan, sopa paraguaya, milanesa, so we keep the food, the tradition. I am a bit lazy. I still have to, like my grandmother has shown me how to make sopa paraguaya, but I really need to have like a day where she teaches me all those dishes because as my husband said, one day your grandmother's not going to be here and then who's going to keep the tradition? So it's on me. So I really have to, I think because I'm always constantly working, I'm like, I always make that an excuse, but really I have to spend like at least a day with my grandmother just so she can, even if I film it, so then I have it, so then I know how to, because my daughter's always like, Milanesa, we love Milanesa, Mum, you've got to cook it for us. Milanesa, I know how to make. I make pretty good Milanesa. So, and also the music, we like to keep the music, playing at home, like, Brazilian music, Latin music. So yeah,
Do you
yeah.
listen to any like reggaeton, like your Daddy
Love
Yankee?
reggaeton,
Yeah.
salsa, candombe. Like I love it. I love all South American, like Latino music. It's always, as soon as I hear it, I feel happy and I want to dance. So it's always been part of my life, the music and the dancing side of things.
Yeah. Nice, nice.
Yeah.
And what about when you speak to your dad, do you speak to him in Spanish or Spanglish or English?
I speak to him in Spanish. I speak
Yep.
to my father in Spanish. My dad also speaks Guarani, which is the dialect, the
Oh,
Paraguayan. Yeah, I don't speak it. I can say a few words. I understand it because my parents used to talk, and my grandparents at home would talk Guarani. I also lived in Paraguay for about 6, 7 months when I was 14. So I picked up a lot more. I understood a lot more Guarani. But with my father, yes, I speak to him and his wife in Spanish. To my grandmother, I speak in Spanish. My uncles, I speak in Spanish. With cousins, we speak in English.
yeah.
With
That's
my
yeah.
brother, I speak in English too. That's just we've grown up speaking in English. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems to be the common thread, isn't it? Like where you speak to your parents in Spanish, and but then you speak to your like siblings, cousins, even family, friends in
In
English, even if
English,
it's
yes.
language. Although now I'm actually transitioning slowly into Spanglish. Like I'm
Yes, Spanglish
actually,
as well. Yeah,
yeah,
that's another, yeah,
going back to what I need because
yeah.
it's really interesting because not just my family friends, but I actually previously dated someone who's was partly Paraguayan as well, and his mum spoke Guarani, and so I could never quite understand. I knew that it was a different, like it's the indigenous language of
Indigenous language, that's right.
Hawaiians, and
Yes.
they say I read somewhere that, or they might have told me that it's the only indigenous language in South America where it's the dominant language in the country as opposed to Spanish.
Yeah,
Would
I
you?
think I think you're right because even I went to school when I was over in Paraguay and they had to speak Guarani. Like they had an actual class which was Guarani, and most of the kids in high school all spoke Guarani, which yeah. So you could be right. I don't know for sure, but that sounds pretty correct.
Yeah, yeah, which I found really interesting as well. I found like that really like, it was so well integrated into the country and I felt like from an outsider looking in, I was like, that's beautiful. Like
Yeah,
that's a
it is
beautiful.
beautiful. It is. And it's a beautiful language as well. I find it beautiful when I hear my father or my grandparents or their family friends talking in Guarani. I think it's a beautiful language.
Yeah, I agree. Oh well, and then so do you when you speak to your like well, first rewind, can your
Yeah.
daughters speak a little bit of Spanish?
A little bit of Spanish. My eldest, she speaks a little bit more. She's more curious, like wants to learn. My younger daughter as well, like she sometimes goes on to that Duolingo. So they do understand more than they speak, but they're becoming more interested now that they're older because my eldest is 21, my youngest is 18. So I think when they were younger, they weren't really too fussed about it, but now that they're a lot older, they're embracing it more and they really want to learn how to speak it. They're constantly asking me, Mum, how do you say this? And so, yeah.
That's beautiful that they want to
Yeah,
stay
yeah,
connected and learn the language
that's
more.
right.
I
Exactly,
love that.
exactly. And my daughters are very lucky because they have my husband's also his parents are West Indian Jamaican, so they have that culture, and then they have the South American culture. So they are just a melting pot of cultures. So they're very blessed in that way.
Yeah, that would be the beautiful cultural
Yeah,
infusion.
yeah,
My goodness.
yeah.
And also would imagine the food from your husband's side.
Yeah, yeah, chicken, rice, and peas, beautiful. Like my mother-in-law cooks the most, and my husband as well. He's such a great cook. Yeah, so he introduced me to all that kind of cuisine as well. So yeah, we've got the best of both worlds.
I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah,
It's because that generation, your daughters, I feel as though they will have a slightly different experience because now the Latin community is a little bit more known.
yeah.
So going back to your early days growing up, say your teen years, would you say that a lot of people knew what an Argentinian or Paraguayan was? Like if you said, that Argentinian, Paraguayan, or even Latina, would they know?
I think they did, but I think you're right. Now it's more. I think with the World Cup, the soccer,
Mhm.
Messi, is such a big thing. People love Messi, Maradona. So I think it's more when you do say I'm Argentinian, people are like, oh, yeah, Argentinian. Paraguayan, I think less. I think people kind of don't even know where that country is. They think when you say Paraguay, they think, oh, Uruguay. They say, no, 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 it's the difference. Uruguay, Paraguay, two different countries. So Argentina, people will look, yeah, Argentina, the World Cup, soccer, the food. But Paraguay, and I found people didn't know where that was
Mm.
as much.
And also, like, I feel like when you think of South America or Latin America, people, the top countries always like Mexico, Colombia, and
Brazil
Argentina,
and
Brazil.
Brazil.
It's like, oh,
Exactly.
did you ever
That's it.
get the people calling you Mexican because you spoke Spanish?
Yeah, or Spanish. They think,
Yeah,
oh, it's from
awesome.
Spain, like, oh, you're Spanish, you must be from Spain. No,
Yeah,
I'm South American, I speak Spanish, I'm Argentinian.
very like I got it all the time. I was like, oh, you must be Spanish, right?
Yeah,
From Spain.
yeah,
I've
yeah,
been to Spain once. I really like it. I'm like, oh, interesting, because I don't know
yeah.
much about it
I'm
anyway.
not Spain. Yeah, I know, yeah, same, same. I haven't even been to Spain.
Yeah. And have you been able to take your daughters back to either Argentina or Paraguay
No,
since?
no, I haven't. I went back when I was, as I said, with my mum and dad and my brother when I was 14. We went to live over there because my brother at the time was playing soccer, and he got us to be in a soccer team in Paraguay, the
Wow.
first division. So we moved, my parents sold our property here and we moved to South America to support my brother in his soccer career. But I've never been back. I went to Argentina and Paraguay, but I've never gone back since then. My mum's family is all here in Australia. My father's side is some in Argentina, some in Paraguay. And my father's here, my grandmother's here. She's quite elderly now, my uncles. I never had a reason to kind of go over there. My brother did move over there. If my brother was still there, I'd probably go over. Who knows? Maybe one day, I think we have to take the girls to London first because
Mm.
my husband's he's British, so I think that would be the first place we go, so they can see where their dad grew up and meet my husband's side of the family. And maybe the next trip could be to South America, or maybe they might go on their own. I mean, they're 21 and
Yeah.
18 now, so
Oh, there you go.
they might go on their own.
Beautiful. It's like, I think there's a name for it. It's like a discovery trip or something where you go to,
Yeah, yeah,
somewhere where your
exactly.
family's
That's
from
it.
and try
Yeah.
the food and culture.
Well, that's what
That would
I
be
that's
beautiful.
what I did when I was 14. I went to my parents are from a country town called San Pedro del Paraná, which is in Paraguay, and I went there and saw how my parents grew up, and it was a culture shock in the way that it made me realize how privileged we are and how lucky we are in this country because my parents grew up, in this little country town, and to go to the bathroom, you had to go outside in a little shed. You had to bathe in a bucket. It was like, I was like, oh my God. It was, for me as a 14-year-old, it was like, wow, like I get to shower in a warm shower. I get to sleep in a cozy bed. It just showed me my parents worked so hard to get to where they were, and also to be able to bring us here to Australia to give us, better education, better way of life. So yeah, and that made me realize how lucky we are and how blessed and fortunate we are as well. And I thank my parents for doing that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
beautiful. That's
yeah,
beautiful. I feel
yeah.
like that's such a, because you said you were there for 6 months, right? That is such a like eye-opening experience, and it's probably something that gave you so much perspective for the
A
rest of your
hundred
life.
percent, a hundred
Yeah,
percent. It was like you said, a discovery trip
yeah.
for me.
I actually went to Argentina before I went to Chile,
Yeah,
and I stayed there for I think it was a month or 2 months in
yeah,
Isla. So it's like
yeah.
there was like I stayed in like the pueblos of Argentina, and I had a very similar experience, right? It was like the showers, there wasn't tiles, it was just concrete.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like you have the bucket because it was like a hose hanging on
Trickle.
the wall. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
trickle.
Yep.
The rooms that you slept with, you could still see the bricks, and it was like the homemade bricks, like where you
Yeah.
just kind of like the house yourself. Yeah, it was very, very confronting for me. And but what I remember from my experience in Argentina was how they had so little money, but they had such a fulfilling and a happy
So
outlook.
happy. I know. So right, isn't it? Like they'd offer you anything that they had, even
Everything,
if they
yeah,
didn't. Yeah, you'd go there and they'd have food, and they were so happy. They had,
yeah,
not a lot, but they were never complaining or never miserable or just happy people. It's
you know,
so true.
making the most of just what they had, and
What they
also
have.
embracing family. Like I remember everyone would just in the street we're in, everyone would just have their families drinking mate
Yep.
outside,
Yep.
listening to like una
Yeah.
cumbia,
So
and
nice.
You
Yeah,
know,
and
you're
that's
coming from Australia, it's like, whoa, but then you get to the crux of it and it's so wholesome.
yeah, and that's what you miss. I think
Yeah,
that's one thing that, that I love, the warmth and the culture of South American people. And I think now it's a different generation, and I find the youth, when I was growing up, it was more of a thing. All the young South Americans would get together at the Argentinian club or the Paraguayan club. Whereas now I find the youth of today, there's not much, they don't embrace it as much, you don't see like associations as much, which is a shame.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually had similar conversations with people about that, especially because of like those clubs, right? Argentinian, there's a Chilean one. I don't think there's a Chilean one, but they have an association.
There's
The
Uruguayan, yeah.
Uruguayan
Yeah,
club. Did
that's
you
a
ever
big
go to
one.
that one?
Yeah, I've been to the
Yeah.
Uruguayan. I think that's still going, which is good. But I don't know, I haven't been for a long time, so I don't know if there's much of a youth, because I know it's a lot more kind of the older generation that still go, but I don't know about the youth, because a lot have fallen off.
I agree. Well, yeah, it's interesting because I went there the last couple of shows that they've had, and it's still a lot of like the older generation who are running logistically. I mean,
Yeah,
that's what it looks like. But I did go to a beautiful show. I believe it was a Bolivian run by Sabor Boliviano. And one of the younger generation was saying like he's going to try his best with his sister to keep the cultura alive by
that's
doing these
good.
folkloric dances and stuff.
Nice.
But I think it's happening. It's not. It doesn't look as intense and as prominent as what it was back
What
in
it
the day,
was.
for sure.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, I've noticed that too.
yeah. It's like, did
Yeah.
you ever go to the Fairfield Showground Chilean
Yeah,
Independence Day?
I think I went a lot, like in the 90s, of the Fairfield Showground. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Similar story though. Like you go there now, and it's like a fifth of the size. But if you went back in the 90s, like
Oh,
it
back
was
in
like
the 90s, it was packed. It was the
right.
thing to go every year,
Yeah,
Fairfield Showground is,
yeah.
yeah,
That was it, and it would go on till like all hours
till
of the
late at
morning.
night.
It had every kind of Peruvian, Chilean, Uruguayan, Paraguayan. Like it was
Yeah,
a hot mix.
definitely.
Yeah.
I think we felt that when I get the last World Cup, when Argentina was in the finals, a lot of Argentinians got together, and you could feel the vibe. All the Argentinians online on social media. It was wonderful. It was such a, I don't know, a joyous moment for Argentinians, and you could feel the support. All the Argentinians coming out for things like that. It's a proud moment for us here in Australia when we're able to, rejoice the Argentinians winning, the World Cup.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I remember
yeah,
being here and I just saw all the advertisements for all the Argentinians getting together to watch the World Cup, the most recent
yeah,
World Cup.
yeah,
And it was like, what was that like? Are you a football fan? I imagine if your
yeah.
dad
I
and your
am.
brother are. Yeah?
Yeah, I am, and especially when it comes to the World Cup, it's just an exciting time. My daughter's also played soccer, so, and my husband as well. So we're all soccer fans. But when the World Cup's on, it's like, especially Argentina, we're like up at,
Yeah.
4 o'clock in the morning to watch the games. Got up for the final. Yeah, yeah. It's been part of my life since I was a little girl. I love soccer, and especially, I guess, being South American, it's the kind of the sport.
Did you watch the Women's World Cup that came through?
Yeah, watched the Women's World Cup as well. Yep, yep. Saw bits and pieces, not as much, I think, but did, supported Australia and Argentina, the two teams,
Yeah,
and um, Britain as well, because, we've got
yeah.
that side. Yeah,
Actually, wait, now that I think about it, your husband's British,
yeah,
you're Argentinian. Like
yeah.
that, is there any like
In the World Cup,
rivalry?
yeah, yeah. Like, back in the day, he would put it on his British jersey, and I'd put on my Argentinian jersey, and we'd be like, I was like, okay, who are you going to go for? It was like, here we go. But we always supported Australia, Argentina, and Britain. So at least one of them, has to do well.
Yeah, one of them's bound to
But
win
it's
because
always
they're all.
Argentina. It's always Argentina.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
Paraguay as well. I mean, I'd had to support whenever Paraguay played. I'd have to support Paraguay as well. For my
yeah.
father and my mom.
Of course.
Yeah,
Oh, it's beautiful. And your. I wanted to ask as well. We spoke about it briefly, like
yeah,
before we started recording.
yeah,
But your last name.
yes,
So that's for those like listening. I just double checked Laura's name before we got on the show because I wanted to make sure I said it correctly.
yeah,
But Vasquez.
yes.
So
Vasquez.
what do you
In
get when
Spanish, it's Vasquez.
Vasquez? Uh-huh.
Yeah. Laura Vazquez. But in English, I've always pronounced it Vazquez because it's spelt with two Z's. Because I know there are some Vazquezes in Australia, but they spell it with an S and Z, whereas mine is Vazquez. So two Z's.
Yeah, that's right. I remember you
Yeah.
said that on the email. You're like, just a hot
Yeah,
tip.
yeah.
It's got two
Because a
Z's
lot
in
of people do
it.
spell it with the S, yeah. So I just had to make sure that it's got two Z's. And I think it comes from Spanish.
Mm.
I think my father's background is Spanish somewhere along the line. So Vasquez is a very Spanish name with the two Z's, especially. So a Spanish
Yeah.
person would say Vasquez. I don't know, with
Huh?
the th, the,
Yeah.
because they say the th, yeah, Vasquez. Vasquez, I don't know. Two Z's, that's a tongue tied.
That would be a double whammy with
I
the
know, double
sound.
whammy, right? Yeah, yeah.
And what was growing up? How would people pronounce your name here in Australia? Your
Yeah,
last
some
name?
people like couldn't say it properly. Some people would say, gosh, all different. A lot of people would like, I guess phonetically Vasquez, they'd be able to say it. But yeah, I get called a lot of different names. Vaquez sometimes.
Vazquez.
Vaquez,
I could
yeah.
see that. Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah. It's like how my last name's Yanez. I've also
Right.
got the Z, Yanez, but people
Yes.
just say like Yanzi,
Yeah.
Yans, you
Yeah.
know? I'm like,
Yeah.
most of the
Just
time I'm like,
having to correct them.
yeah.
Yeah.
And do your parents call you, is it Laura? Like,
Laura.
would you, Laura?
Yeah. Laura.
But in Australia, it's Laura.
Laura. Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
one do you prefer, Laura or Laura?
Look, it doesn't matter. I mean, most people, I've grown up being called Laura, so it's fine. When I'm with, family and friends who are South American, they all call me Laura, even people that from when I was a little girl that have been part of my life. So it doesn't matter. Either or.
Either or,
Yeah.
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 I guess my name, Michelle, is very Australian as it
Yeah.
is. My mum
Yeah.
liked it because it was, because I was born here. So
Right.
she felt that it would be an easier integration process if I had an Australian sounding name.
Right. Okay.
Whereas my older brothers are Rodrigo and Ricardo, like Rodrigo,
Right.
Ricardo, which are very like
Yeah.
Latin.
Yeah, because
But
my brother is George, but Jorge, so
Jorge,
Jorge because the J, yeah. So in Spanish, everyone calls him Jorge, but here in Australia, they call him George.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's very interesting how like you come to Australia and you just have to like I don't say you have to, but like most people just adopt the Australian way of saying it
yeah,
because it's like it is
definitely.
what it is. We live here. That's how people are going to pronounce it. I wanted to go back to Home and Away, and you're working on set. Who would you say was the most person that you like did makeup on or hair or your team did that you were
Yeah.
most starstruck about?
Wow. Well, because I worked with Ray Ma, who plays Alf, and Lynn McGranger, who plays Irene. I worked with them when I was an actress. So I think because I've worked with so many actors and actors from when I was little. Yeah, I don't really get I wouldn't say I get
That's
starstruck. I
fair.
think more admire people that I work with. I think we've had guesties on the show that I used to watch growing up. Like there was a show called Sons and Daughters, and there's been a couple of actors from that show, and so those people I'm like, oh my gosh, I grew up watching you.
Yeah.
So it's more admiration, but yeah, I think because I've met so many famous celebrities in my time from when I was young, I don't really get starstruck. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And if you were to have, I guess, any advice for someone who's looking to get into something similar in terms of maybe makeup, but more specifically being on like behind the scenes TV,
Yeah.
right, working for home, what tips would you give that person?
I think just learning, going and getting the skills first of all, and watching. Now we're very lucky because we have so much social media. You don't need to sometimes do a full year course because there's so much training online and videos and tutorials, and sometimes people are naturally gifted. They naturally have the talent. It's not a thing that they need to learn. It just comes naturally. So just keep learning. Also work on short films, maybe not paid for a couple of them, just to go on set and learn how it all works. See if you like it, ask a lot of questions, and then you meet a lot of people when you do that. You make a lot of contacts, and the next thing you know, one of the crew members might contact you and say, hey, we're looking for a makeup artist, or we're looking for a camera person, can you come and join this next production? And then that time they probably get paid. So I think, yeah, it's all about learning and offering your services, like offering to do like a photo shoot for free, maybe once or twice, or work on a short film. And that's where you kind of meet people that could possibly be the next person that, you work with on a next production.
If you were to give, so my majority of the Amiga Mia audience is two parts. We've got the Latin Americans who are based in Australia, who are raised in Australia, and then we also have like new Latin migrants who've arrived to Australia. I definitely have people, which is really wild,
Yeah,
hearing in different parts of Latin America. So that
yeah.
part, I just saw that in my Spotify Wrapped statistics, and it's like, oh, you've got following in South America, which is awesome. What words would you share to the community? It could be about anything, anything.
Look, I'm so proud to be Argentinian. I love this country. I love Australia, and I'm very fortunate to what it's given my parents and my family. But I love to embrace, and I think for every Latino living here, whether you were born here, whether you grew up in it with family, with parents that are from South America, is just to embrace it, because it's such a beautiful culture. We're so blessed. I mean, a lot of people that, Australians that have come into my home, even growing up and experiencing like an asado, a barbecue, they're like, oh my gosh, this is such a beautiful culture. Your food is so wonderful. Your family's so beautiful. Like, they say to me, I wish that I grew up in a culture like yours. So that's why I feel like I'm so proud and I'm so blessed that I grew up in this beautiful culture, and I'm so lucky that my parents continued that culture and with me and my brother growing up. So yeah, I would just say to all the Latinos out there that are listening, to even, the young, the youth, just to embrace the culture and love it and be proud. Be proud to be a Latino. Don't hide it, because I think a lot of people as well, I don't know, the youth of today, sometimes they hide it, that they're, Latino. They don't even say, yeah, they'll say I'm Australian. Whereas I've always felt, even though I am part Australian, I grew up, whenever anyone asks me, where are you from? What nationality are you? I always say I'm Argentinian, because I'm proud.
I'm
Yeah.
so glad just so
Yeah.
quickly you brought that up, because one of the
Yeah.
questions I ask everyone, because
Yeah.
it's probably one of the questions I get the most through Amiga Mia, is understanding, especially people like yourself and myself who grew up in Australia, but like roots are South American.
Yeah.
How do you culturally identify? So you culturally identify as Argentinian?
Yeah, Argentinian. And my mum, as I said, my mum and dad are Paraguayan, but I think because I was born in Argentina, my parents were quite young when they moved to Argentina from Paraguay, and I was raised, well, I mean, I was raised here in Australia with the Paraguayan culture and the Argentinian culture, but more so the Argentinian culture. I think going to the Argentinian club, being Miss Argentina, meeting other Argentinians. My dad played for the Argentinian soccer team, so Argentina was a big part of our life. So that's why I feel like, um, you know, I consider myself Argentinian, yeah. And even my name, Laura Vazquez, I have a different maiden name, and all my paperwork and all my private stuff is my marriage name. As an entertainer and my public profile, I've kept Laura Vazquez because that's what I feel as a Latina. It's got the Latino name, and I've grown up with that name. So for my public profile, I've kept Laura Vasquez, because that's who I feel I am.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
that. That's very empowering.
yeah, very empowering.
Yeah, to be able to retain that, because
Yeah,
it's a piece of culture, effectively, and more as much as it is identity.
yeah,
The Vasquez, yeah,
yes,
that's
yeah,
beautiful.
definitely.
That's so lovely.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much, Laura. I really appreciate, you opening up this space that we had to just chat about your life, and
yeah.
I'm really excited to continue to follow your journey. Actually, yeah. So what's next for you? Do you do anything else like freelancer
Yeah,
projects or
I
any?
well, I mainly, my full-time position is at home and away, but I also am a content creator. So I also use my social media platform as Laura Vasquez, to do video tutorials, makeup, hair. I like to kind of still keep that part of me for myself and different things. I like to show people what I like, what I enjoy doing. My Instagram and my TikTok, is very much about me, about Laura Vazquez. So yeah, I do all that as well. So yeah, keep an eye out. A lot of exciting things coming up for 2025. So follow me.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so for people who want to follow you on
yeah,
TikTok and Instagram, what's
yeah.
your handle?
Official Laura Vasquez.
Perfect.
So
So for
yeah,
those listening,
and
I'll
it's
add
got a
that to
tick.
the show notes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm the only official Laura Vasquez. Any other Laura Vasquez, that's not me. I'm the official.
Well, as I said, thank you so much for your time. I wish you nothing but the best for what you're doing at home and away. Like that's so exciting, and
Thank
also
you.
with your creative content creation. That
Yeah,
I'd love having that window into your life and the way that
thank
you
you.
do your craft. So really appreciate you opening up today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is such a beautiful platform, and it's. I love following you as well, and just seeing all the Latino stuff. And I'm constantly cracking up with some of the videos you post. I'm like, oh my god, the auntie Latina at Christmas. That just I was in fits. I thought, my god, yes, that's so true, and only Latinos get it. You know what I mean? No, so it's so good. I'm like, it's fantastic. It's such a great platform, and I'll be following you as well.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much for
much.
having me.